Hey there, welcome to episode 127 of Gracefully and Frankly. She is Lisa Brandt.
She is Erin Davis, the one, the only.
There is another Erin Davis.
I know. There's another Lisa Brandt, too. Your Erin Davis is also out west, isn't she?
Yeah, and a broadcaster, maybe former broadcaster. I don't know where she is, but who's the other Lisa Brandt?
Apparently a broadcaster somewhere in Ontario. I haven't been able to find her, but people have told me that she exists. So she's probably about 30 years younger than us. So
just as long as they don't get caught. Used to say writing bad checks, but there's any number of things now you can get caught.
Yeah.
You may have heard me say any number of things, and I'm missing half a tooth, and we'll get to that. But all our Leaf stuff is put away for another year.
Oh, Erin, I don't know how you guys stand it. You know, I don't watch the regular season. I get excited about the playoffs, and of course I want the Leafs to win, but I'm not as invested as you are year after year after year. Like, how does Rob stand it? How do you stand it?
For part of the season, I feel like I'm helping navigate his moods about the team. Like, he's not really expecting much either. And then when we get near the playoffs or to the playoffs, you start thinking, wow, this could happen. And then you forget that as of last Sunday, they have lost 7 game 7s when it mattered. It just... People talk about a curse. At least I don't know. But there's a lot of talk about Toronto fans, Leafs fans, being among the worst fans in Major League sports.
Is this because they were throwing their jerseys on the ice and leaving before the game was over?
Yeah, like the $300 jerseys. Yeah. Somebody did that in games 5 and 7. And it's just a sign of we've given up on you. It's not like throwing, a hat or something. A jersey is a serious statement. And I don't know, the psychology of players, you remember that they grew up in front of their home fans as teenagers and their parents and family just cheering them on. No booing from the home fans. Yeah, we're brutal fans, but when you spend that kind of money, is there a sense of entitlement, Lisa? And do fans deserve to have it? I don't know.
I don't know either, because it's not like it's the same players every time. It's funny when you talk about going to a rink, I automatically think of Austin Matthews in Arizona and what he had to go through to play hockey. But yeah, I don't really know. I don't have that kind of allegiance to anything, any kind of team or anything like that. So I don't think I'm the one to say. If you invest that many years in belief and going to the games, I think he would be entitled to some sort of payback.
You would think so. Oh, gosh. Life goes on, and now we are Oilers fans in our home, not just because I was born in Edmonton, but because we want a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup.
Yes, I will jump on that bandwagon, too.
It is silly. I mean, if you look at how many Canadians and Americans are on all the teams, it really doesn't matter. But it's been a long time since Lord Stanley's Cup was hoisted here north of the border. And this just feels like the year,
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't know. No more lunch bag letdowns for these people who bleed blue and white. Oh.
Yeah, on we go to the next thing, which for you is gardening. Good for you.
Well, just 2 planters now. I put perennials all around the fences and everywhere else a couple years ago. And by I mean I pointed and Derek dug them in.
Yay, the best kind.
But so we have 2 planter boxes, and I tried all sorts of vegetables, and they don't get deep enough in these boxes. So they can't really grow the roots, and they can't, like my cauliflower a couple years ago was about the size of a toonie. Yeah, and that's just not going to work. I did only tomatoes last year. They turned out all right, but they weren't very big. This time I'm doing fewer plants, thinking they won't have to compete for the resources, and maybe I'll get better tomatoes. I don't know. I'm sure there are container gardening experts listening to this going, but you just have to do whatever it is, please add it to our Facebook page, because whatever it is that I'm not doing, I thought I did my research. But so just tomatoes, cucamelons, and flowers. That's it.
Okay, back up. Cucamelons. There was a cartoon that we used to watch when Colin was a baby called Cocomelon.
Cocomelon!
So what's a
Cocomelon?
It looks like a little tiny grape-sized watermelon. It's from Mexico. My friend Leanne grew them, and I'd never had one before. And she gave me a whole bunch last year and a bunch of seeds, and they're just so unusual. They're super crunchy. You eat the whole thing. You don't take the rind off. And it tastes like a cross between a tomato and a cucumber. And it's really unusual. I love it. And if I do get them to grow, I'll probably get about 7 million of them because that's how it works. They just grow like mad. You can do all sorts of things with them, but I just throw them in salad.
Okay, it sounds like you could pickle them too, but then we're getting way too Little House on the Prairie. A lot of people pickle. I don't pickle. I don't even garden.
My mother used to pickle, and she pickled a lot.
She's still pickling, yeah.
Oh,
mine
no.
too. Oh, dear.
Oh, dear, it's right.
Pickling and canning was a whole different level. Like, I just remember those big blue canners on the stove and all the steam and being so careful with the metal parts and making sure the lids were sealed. Was it a labor of love, or was it a necessity to make sure the pantry was full for the winter, or, I don't know, or just a hangover from their parents and grandparents?
Maybe, but there's a whole revolution now of people going back to that because they're eating only locally. So that means canning the heck out of stuff. Mm-hmm. And if things aren't available yet, well, then you're eating like beets until your eyes turn red.
Right.
So you want to pickle some or do whatever with them. And there's a return. I've got a bunch of friends who do it. I can't. Not yet. If I really, really needed to, I suppose I would. But as it stands right now, no. Boiling jars and all that stuff.
Yeah, that.
I'd like to make my own jam sometime. But again, it sounds like way too much work.
Well, I finally figured out a sugar-free compote to have with a dessert, the low-carb ice creams or whatever the stuff that we buy and you buy. Just buy frozen strawberries, put them in a pan, add a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of vanilla. I add stevia for sweetener, and then it just kind of boils down and you simmer it, and there you go. You've got a really nice sauce that has only the sugar grams that the strawberries have.
Very nice. I'll be making that. A little vanilla sounds fantastic in that.
It is. Once again, a cooking tip for me. I don't even believe it.
I tried to grow strawberries a couple years ago, too, and they turned out to be about the size of a pinky nail. So, yeah, not so good in the containers either, but live and learn.
And you've got bunnies and stuff, too. You've got predators in your little neighborhood.
And we like them. We like having bunnies around, so that's why we got the raised planter bed so that we didn't have to not have the bunnies. So, yeah, we like seeing a bunny outside once in a while.
A lot of people find gardening to be therapeutic. It's meditative. People enjoy, I don't, but people enjoy getting their hands dirty and their knees dirty. And it just feels like almost literally connecting with the earth. So for them, it's a kind of therapy. But there is a new kind of therapy, which couldn't be any further along on the spectrum from the getting down and dirty to where this is now. And you have a couple of friends who have been looking into this, and I think it's fascinating.
They're using ChatGPT as a therapist. Now, this only works, and of course, take it with a grain of whatever, but it only works if you've been using ChatGPT regularly so it can get to know you.
Okay.
So you can't just go in cold, sign in and go, hi, what do you think? For example, one of my friends, she actually talked me into doing this, and it works. Using ChatGPT instead of Google, you get much more comprehensive results than you do just from Google that brings back a list of stuff. Mm-hmm. So then it gets to know you. It knows what you're searching for. So I went in today to ChatGPT, and I said, can you fill in as a therapist for me?
Oh.
And it wrote back, the AI wrote back, I can definitely offer a listening ear, ask helpful questions, and guide you through reflection. Then it went on to say, I'm, much like a therapist, but I'm not licensed. I'm not a real therapist. And what's on your mind today? So I wrote, based on what you know about me, do you see any issues with my mental health?
Wow. That's a great starting off point, Lisa.
Well, I was fascinated to see what it would say because I have used it for all sorts of searches, like medical, all sorts of things.
Well, when you're an author like yourself, I'm just going to take us off track for a second.
Sure.
There are things in Lisa's book 1, and especially, I think, book 2, where you talk about a certain kind of farming. And I wrote to you as I was reading this over, and I said, where the heck did you learn about that stuff? So, obviously you've been doing a lot of research. Some of it was boots on the ground because there's some stuff set in Italy, you poor thing. In your Pieces of Us, the first book in the Felicity and Mitzi trilogy, which you can order through gracefullyandfrankly.com. So anyway, what I'm going to say is, obviously you've been doing a lot of research, so it makes sense you would go this route for therapy. So go on. What did it say?
First, let me say that asking a question is all I do. I don't ever ask it to write anything for me.
Right.
Because that to me is way off base, right?
Of course.
So when I said, based on what you know about me, do you see any issues with my mental health? And I swear I didn't tell it to say this. This is what it came back with.
Okay.
So it wrote, from what you've shared so far, you strike me as thoughtful, creative, and emotionally intelligent. You seem to have a strong capacity to empathize with others and to think deeply about complex, often painful human experiences. And then it says, that said, I can't diagnose or assess mental health conditions. Your self-awareness is a good sign. Would you like to talk more about what prompted the question? And I just left it there. So that's the kind of thing that it quickly goes back over the transcripts, I guess, of what you've put in before and decides on something. Now, I'm sure a person could manipulate it if they wanted to. I haven't. I just got to be me.
I'm wondering, Lisa, as I'm listening to this, because you and I both journal at voiceoflisabrandt.com and at erindavis.com, if you could put in everything you've done as a journalist, like not literal journalist, but as someone who blogs, and this could go for anyone. If you're listening and you tend to put your thoughts down daily or weekly or whatever, if you could give access to your AI therapist and say, read these. And then that gives you just so many layers of background from which to come up with answers.
That would really work, I'm sure, because the more it has, the more it can judge and the more it can work from. So one of my friends who is literally using this as a therapist, she lives in the U.S., and as we know, therapy is expensive and there's no coverage for it. She got a list of 10 things that it identified that are sort of blind spots in her perspective on life and things and stuff, things that she can work on. And I don't know what they are specifically. I didn't ask, none of my business, but it just sounds fascinating to me. I think like with a real live therapist, you have to stop and judge for yourself whether or not you trust what you're getting. And there's a certain amount of healthy skepticism that you have to exercise, I think. Mm-hmm. Because it is a tool.
Right.
But I just find the whole idea fascinating. And for somebody who really wants, I'm using air quotes, someone to talk to know that this thing is here, you can set it so that it doesn't keep a link of everything, or you can keep a link, but because it comes back to you, it's like a conversation. It can feel like therapy. How great would that be if you don't have the money for it and you need that outlet? I think it's a great use for it.
I do, too. I agree with that. Now, for people who aren't familiar with ChatGPT but have only heard about it, how does one get into that AI?
You just go to chatgpt.com. And let me go back to the beginning and see what it says. I mean, I'm on the free plan. I'm always ever going to be on the free plan. You can pay for it.
Did your therapist say you're cheap?
So when you get to chatgpt.com, there's a little phrase, what can I help with? And it shows you ask anything. So you can type in a search. It says reason, deep research, create an image, collaborate on writing. Again, something I would never do. But there's all sorts of things. You can connect it to your stored documents on Google Drive if you want. You can, I know, it's insane. It's insane how much it can do.
So there you go. You could attach all of your blogs, and then it would really know Lisa Brandt.
I absolutely could. I don't know. I like what it thinks of me right now. I don't really want to mess with that.
Girl, you in trouble. Now, my other point to this, and I find this whole thing fascinating because I'm all about self-improvement, especially if it's at your fingertips and it's affordable and available. There was an episode of Law and Order a few weeks ago where the defendant had killed someone And the prosecution knew that this person had talked to an AI therapist about killing so-and-so. So there was a conversation between the two. And this whole thing came up, okay, is this doctor-client privilege? And the ruling in this particular case was, no, it wasn't. But doesn't this open up a whole can of worms in terms of what is and isn't admissible because you've had these private conversations with a computer?
But I think the thing to remember is nothing on the internet is private.
Right.
Ever, right?
Right.
And it's the younger people who didn't grow up before the internet that don't get that as well as we do. We understand. You know, we have a world view of this thing. And so I just assume nothing is private. But yeah, that's fascinating, the fact that it could come into legality, and especially with Moida.
Yeah, with Moida. Moida, she wrote, yes.
Now, speaking of
Needing a shrink?
bettering yourself in every way, please tell us what happened with your tooth.
Oh, my gosh. So, I don't even know how long ago, Lisa, when I was in Toronto and, more pictures and billboards and all that kind of stuff being taken, I wanted to get my teeth improved. They crossed, I had a narrow bridge, and it was time to just do something about them, so I got veneers. Now, if people don't know what veneers are, they don't have to be huge chiclets like Wayne Gretzky has. If you have a good dentist, they sort of file down the tooth underneath, and then they fit a nice porcelain piece up to the gum, and then it's adhered and it's matched so it doesn't look, like a white blue you could see from space. It matches your colors and everything, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. You've got veneers for, well, I was hoping the rest of my life, but I've had one in particular crack and have it repaired, always before I was about to go on stage, of course. And then most recently, on Mother's Day, we were watching The Leafs. In a pressure situation, I was eating chicken wings and not being mindful of how hard I was chomping because I was so nervous. And I heard a crack, and I knew it wasn't the wing. And sure enough, half of my one front tooth came off in my hands. So, being the resourceful person that I am, I dried it off, I put some alcohol on it, and Rob, using the crazy glue that I travel with because I have nails, nothing on me is like the original parts anymore. Jeez, for better or worse. And he very carefully glued it on. Worked perfectly. I go to the dentist. They fit me in on Tuesday of last week. She says, this is on really well. She kind of picked at it, and I said, use a crowbar if you need to get it off. And she said, no, I'm leaving this here till you get to your veneer guy. Haven't heard from the veneer guy. So I'm expecting that this week I will have, by the time this airs, gone to see him, and he'll be making plans for a new boat because I think I have to get the whole bunch of them repaired.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah, she said there's another one that's cracked, and my gums are rising up. And I said, oh, good, I'm glad something on me is rising at this age. I said, can you do the boobs? No, absolutely not.
My gums are doing the same thing, my dear. They're receding.
Yes.
This is a thing that happens at our age, and it's not pleasant. Well, I'm sorry about the whole veneer thing. I had one veneer, so I know whereof you speak, and I lost it in a candy apple at the Western Fair years ago. And
that's the worst.
Yeah, and the dentist said to me, do you want to keep an eye out for it and bring it in? I said, let's start new.
Oh.
So,
shoot. Yeah. What were you thinking? It was just mindless, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just bit and it was gone and I swallowed it. So.
Oh, no. Well, that's going to bite you in the ass. Sorry. I couldn't resist. But my dentist, I thought she was going to flip when she saw that I had glued it on. And I said, go ahead, go after me. It's going to show up in the podcast anyway. And she said, look, if you want to sound really intelligent, which kind of is hard after this whole scenario, say that you fixed it with cyanoacrylate. And it's like, oh, wow, she knows her chemicals. Yeah, crazy glue.
Okay. So she admired how you glued it on. Did it stay?
No. I flossed too often. I was getting up between the sides, and I broke the glue seal. So,
Oh.
that was a fine time to leave me, glue seal. And I'm sorry.
So are you going to sing All I Want for Christmas is My Two Front Teeth, or what's the deal?
Just one, but Santa ain't coming through with money like that, I'm afraid. So, jeez.
The price of being purdy.
Well, no, it's the price of being a stupid Leafs fan and being too tense about it all. Oh, my gosh. Well, that was quite the news on Sunday about Joe Biden's health. Ugh, what a terrible blow.
Yeah, and with it being described as aggressive prostate cancer that's already spread to his bones, it certainly doesn't sound good. I forget the name of the scale that they put cancer on, 1 to 10, but his is a 9.
Oh, shoot.
It doesn't sound very good, although would they say it might be hormone receptive?
Okay. Well, here's a man who has done so much to raise money and raise awareness for fighting cancer, and then for him to get it. And, of course, the internet, all of a sudden, everybody's a urologist, eh?
Oh, yeah.
We get viruses, we get vaccines, and everyone turns into a virologist or an immunologist. And it's just like, would you just sit down and let his doctors cover it, for heaven's sake?
It's just out of control. But this is the kind of cancer, I was reading a sort of a deep dive into it, that it's the kind that starts between checkups. It starts so fast, it could have been in a couple of months. It's so aggressive. And that's what they say about mammograms too, right? That you need to still check the girls because stuff can happen in between.
Exactly. And this man, and we're talking about Joe Biden, of course, has access to the best healthcare in the world.
Yeah, it just happens.
It sure does. And there's not a person listening here who hasn't been touched by cancer, or so many by prostate cancer. I mean, my own dad, diagnosed about 20 years ago because his father died of it and with it. His dad was a smoker since his teens, like early teens. But his father died with prostate cancer, so Dad knew to keep an eye on his numbers through his PSA tests. He was on that, and as soon as they rose, that was it. Out came the prostate. And his brother is very vigilant, and now his nephew, and we will be sure that our grandson knows about it because it does run in families.
Yeah. We need to give our men a push sometimes to get those things checked. I know Derek is much more vigilant about stuff because I nag him about it. And I remind him it's because I want him to stay alive and stay here with me. So that's a pretty damn good reason.
Yes. And, somebody brought this up, and it is a good question. Last week you were talking about men running the world and all of that, and we were kind of joking about how much money has been put toward, say, male pattern baldness or Viagra as opposed to endometriosis. So why is it that the scales tip in our favor here, Lisa, where mammograms are covered, but a simple PSA test, a blood test, is not? I don't understand that.
No, I don't understand it either. It doesn't make sense at all. I don't know who makes these decisions.
I don't know. Perhaps it's something that can be addressed. But in the meantime, we do what we can, which is to make sure that the men in our lives, fathers, brothers, sons, grandsons, are aware of any prostate cancer history, and to please, please get the tests, whether it's digital. It's okay. We go through the same or worse on an annual or biannual basis. It's okay. Don't die of embarrassment. Just get everything checked out. Get that clean bill of health and stick around for a while or catch it now.
Yep. Best to know if there's something going on when you can still do something about it.
Absolutely. In the meantime, our thoughts are with Joe Biden and his family. Cancer keeps on giving, eh? So let me ask you a question about a bit of a flag flap that's happening in our bucolic little town of Sydney, of which I have bragged here like a couple weeks ago when we were talking about it. I think it was Forbes magazine named this the best place in Canada to retire.
Yep.
I look out my window, Lisa, and right there at the harbor and the boats and hopefully one day whales, but definitely eagles, there is a mast that flies the flag of British Columbia, the flag of Canada. and the flag of the United States. And honestly, it burns my biscuits.
Is this new?
No, it has been happening, I guess, for years, but this is the year we notice it because of what happened with Trump and the tariffs, right?
Right.
And it sticks out like a sore thumb. So the town council had a meeting, and the mayor wanted to remove them because of Trump's efforts to destabilize our economy and threaten our sovereignty. And there were some council members who said, no, we know the U.S. is not that one man. We don't want to offend visitors. But the residents are saying, have a backbone, you guys.
Not to mention, when do you go to another country and they welcome you by flying your flag?
Well, it happens outside hotels.
That doesn't count. That's got nothing to do with a government. Government's supposed to represent us.
Right.
And that's not representing you. And it doesn't matter who's in the White House or whatever's going on. I just don't think it's appropriate at all, ever. It just doesn't make sense to me. I used to live in a town where Americans came through all the time and we didn't have an American flag.
Really?
I don't get it. Yeah.
Well, here it's a matter of welcoming our overlords. No, it's welcoming them previous to this year because so many Americans would come here. We can literally see them from our backyard. And so there was this beautiful symbiotic relationship between us and the United States because we are so close to each other. You, I'm sure, in Port Stanley have a lot of American tourists as well, yeah?
Sure, yeah. And there used to be ferries
Right.
100 years ago that would go from Ohio, like from Cleveland to here daily, several times a day.
Yeah.
So it's not that we don't love American tourists and welcome them here. We absolutely do. But do we have to fly their flag? I don't think so.
I'm wondering, where in Kyiv are they flying the flag, the red, white, and blue of Russia because they want to welcome Russians? You know, it's
Right.
just, I know it's a bit of an overstatement there, but it's still, no, it feels wrong, and they're not reading the room. It's the Sydney Business Improvement Area, and all they're doing is thinking with their wallets because we have a lot of American property owners here in this town, the big property owners, including the building I'm recording this in right now. They own a lot. They own a lot in Sydney.
Well, maybe it's the tax base. They've looked at the amount of taxes they're putting in and thought, we really should put up a flag. I don't know. It is a complex issue there, that's for sure. The only flag we care about here, besides the Canadian flag, of course, in Port Stanley, is the blue flag, which we've gotten for our main beach again this year.
Yes.
So many years running, it's one of like 20 beaches in Canada or something that gets this designation.
That's fantastic.
But no U.S. flag here that I'm aware of. The Pride flag, yes. The Ukrainian flag, yes.
Yeah.
Because we want to show support for those who need it.
Yeah, waving for our allies, and U.S. isn't an ally. It's just not.
No.
While we're talking Canadian and supporting Canadian, you are supporting a Canadian podcast right now. How Canadian are we? Well, I'll tell you. Our two sponsors are Canadian, including Sierra Sil. And I told you that my sister with her knee surgery wanted to know, I want to see if Sierra Sil works, and I told her to quit it.
Yep.
So this morning, because she's visiting this week, I said, well, did you quit it? And she said, I can't quit it. And so we've got her well and truly hooked because she knows that it works, and there's something in our brains that goes, oh, this can't be it. But it is.
Yeah.
And you have a promise that you will feel a difference in 14 days. I mean, look at it. Almost before June is here. To feel the difference in your joints, especially your knees, or your money back. Sierra Sil anti-inflammatories. Feel the difference. Get on your knees like Lisa and get some gardening done.
Yeah, sierrasil.com, SIERRASIL.com, and 14% off your purchases waiting for you with the code GF.
All Canadian. Well, how about Hudson's Bay and Canadian Tire getting in bed together? What do you think of that?
I'm glad that the iconic stripes won't be going away and that it seems like a natural merge, Canadian Tire and the Bay. But my first thought was, wow, maybe we're going to get an old-fashioned department store out of this. And the first thing I read is, well, it's the death of the department store.
Yeah.
So, but what the heck is Walmart? Isn't Walmart a department store? I don't know.
guess I don't know what qualifies as a department store anymore, Lisa.
I don't either. And I guess it's not really out there yet how they're going to handle products, or if they're going to. Will it be kind of like a little pop-up shop like Zellers within the Bay? Or do you know more about that?
Yeah, no, I don't. What's going to be happening, I would guess, would be a part of the store would be
designated
to be the Hudson's Bay corner where you can get that stuff that you want with the distinctive stripes and everything. And it allows Canadian Tire to lean into that brand nostalgia, because as soon as you see a Hudson's Bay blanket in a movie or whatever, you go, oh, that's from the Bay, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And I think that $30 million would seem to be a bargain for a brand that has been building for over 3 centuries.
It did seem low, didn't it? And
yeah.
I mean, I'm never going to see $30 million, but that seemed like a low number.
Well, it is kind of nice to know that Canadian Tire will be coming to the rescue. Or Canadian Attire, maybe they'll be known if they have enough striped stuff to wear.
Hey, you know, Envy Pillow, all Canadian, once again, has a mulberry silk pillowcase now infused with copper and hyaluronic acid.
Ooh.
That's the stuff you see in the beauty aisle of the drugstore on some of the pricier cosmetics and things that helps keep moisture in your skin. So this pillowcase has the mulberry silk, which is all organic, infused with copper and hyaluronic acid to fight bacteria, keep your skin hydrated while you sleep, and help with the whole prevent your face from getting all squished because you're sitting so nice and pretty on the side of your face on the shape of the Envy pillow. You can buy 3 and get 1 free of these new pillowcases right now, too. They're pretty cool. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And you know what? Hyaluronic acid is so much nicer for your skin for moisturizing than tears from being a Leafs fan. So go to envypillow.com. Find out what we're talking about. Just take a look at all the stuff they've got there and why we've been such big fans and users of the Envy Pillow forever.
Envypillow.com, and the code GF will give you a 10% discount on anything you buy there.
Yay. Well, my love, it's time to wrap it up for another week.
Yes.
We'd love for you to join the conversation. Go to gracefullyandfrankly.com, probably where you clicked to listen to this today, and just look for the little icon and leave us a message. We'd love to feature your voice, your take on our show anytime, any topic at all.
Anything at all. In fact, a container gardening tip would be greatly appreciated. I need help.
Yeah, my container gardening is that lettuce with the clump of dirt on the bottom that I have in my fridge. That's my container gardening.
Does that ever grow back, or do you just eat it because it's live?
I don't know. I cut the roots off and then I listen to it scream. And
oh, they found that really does happen.
Oh, stop it.
There was a study that came out a couple weeks ago. I told a friend of mine about it because he says to me, how do you not know vegetables don't scream? This was 30 years ago. And I said, it turns out you were right. They vibrate. They are very upset.
That's great. Now I have something to talk with my ChatGPT shrink about, Lisa. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. I'm still eating them. I'm still crunching them.
I'm not cutting up a salad. I'm murdering some vegetables. Yay.
Girls gotta eat.
Yeah, geez. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you here again next week.
Bye.
Bye.